Today we begin the 8th chapter of the first flight, Mijbil the Otter by Gavin Maxwell. Now you see the otter here, right? I'm sure you've recognized this creature, right? It is a semi-aquatic fish-eating mammal. It belongs to the weasel family. So this is the otter. And let's talk about him, the great one, Mijbil. That's his name. So Gavin Maxwell was a Scottish naturalist. He is best known for his work with otters. So it's all about, naturalism is desires for the natural instincts. This is about otters. Maxwell was born and brought up in a small village near Port William in Scotland. He died due to cancer. Now what has he in store for us? What's the plot? In Mijbil the Otter, Gavin Maxwell lives in a cottage in Camusfearna in the West Highlands in Scotland. Now this is where he would live. He is fond of keeping pets. After the death of his pet dog Jenny, he was too sad to think of a dog again. Now he had a pet, and when you lose a pet, it's because the pet becomes like a part of your family member. Like a part of your family, he's like a family member. So obviously, you're very depressed once they pass away. The author is in Basra city of Iraq on a visit. Now he's gone to Iraq for a visit. There, a friend of his presents him an otter. He gives him a gift. He takes this otter to England, where he has a flat of his own. Now, we will know what a wonderful time he had with this pet. He has some interesting experiences during his air journey from Basra to Paris and London. Now remember, he was in Basra, he had to go back to London, he had to travel to London, and generally, flights, they don't allow you, taking creatures. So let's see what all did he face when he had to travel. So, early in the new year of 1956, I traveled to southern Iraq. By then, it had crossed my mind that I should like to keep an otter instead of a dog, and that Camusfearna, ringed by water, a stone's throw from its door, would be an eminently suitable spot for this experiment. Now here, like it was mentioned already, he had lost his pet dog. I mean, it had passed away. So, by then he was over it. Like he said, no more of it, So definitely he did not want to bring another dog. But then it had crossed his mind, as in a thought had come to his mind that I should like to keep an otter instead. Now instead of a dog, I would like try to keep an otter as a pet. And that Camusfearna, the place where he's staying, is ringed by water. There is water all around it. It is ringed by water, and it was very close to his house. A stone's throw from its door, extremely close, a very short distance from his house. It would be an eminently suitable spot for this experiment. He says, if I try, it won't be a problem because the water is just there. When I casually mentioned this to a friend, now I just had this conversation with a friend, just like that, my dog has passed away and I'm planning to, domesticate an otter. He as casually replied that I had better get one in the Tigris marshes. Now that's a Tigris river. For there, they were as common as mosquitoes and were often tamed by the Arabs. He says, look, you should go and get it from the Tigris marshes because there you will find them in plenty. Just as common as you find mosquitoes, you will find otters there. And moreover, they are tamed by the Arabs. The Arabs actually tame them. So it will be way easier for you. We were going to Basra to the Consulate General to collect and answer our mail from Europe. Both of them had gone for this work, so they were heading there. At the Consulate General, we found that my friend's mail had arrived, but that mine had not. Now, his mail had come, but mine hadn't, so I had to wait. I cabled to England, cabled as in I sent a message by telegraph. I cabled to England, and when 3 days later, nothing had happened, even waiting for 3 days, I did not receive the mail. I tried to telephone, I even called them. The call had to be booked 24 hours in advance. Now imagine, he had to go through all this procedure to actually get through his mail. On the first day, the line was out of order. Now he did that. First day he called and he booked it 24 hours in advance. The line was out of order. On the second, the exchange was closed for a religious holiday. And on the third day, there was another breakdown. Now, every day he tried, contacting them, but this was the problem. My friend left and I arranged to meet him in a week's time. Now, finally, my friend left. He couldn't wait any longer. I had to stay back because I had to complete this. 5 days later, my mail arrived. I carried it to my bedroom to read, and there, squatting on the floor, were 2 Arabs. Beside them lay a sack that squirmed from time to time. Now, he finally got the mail, so he took the mail and he was heading, to his room to go and read the mail. And what does he find? He finds 2 Arabs sitting there, on the floor. They were there. And beside them, there was a sack. And in the sack, that there was something squirming that was actually twisting about. It was going round and round sort of things. They handed me a note from my friend. Here is your otter. His friend had gifted him an otter. With the opening of that sack began a phase of my life that has not yet ended and may, for all I know, not end before I do. He says, now, the moment I opened that sack, it was like unveiling a new life. It was like welcoming a new life. And that has not yet ended. That phase of life, that beautiful life has not yet ended. And for all that I know, it will not end till I end. Till I die, it will remain the same. It is in effect a thraldom to otters. Thraldom as in it is old-fashioned, being under the control of otters. So, it is in effect a thraldom to otters, an otter fixation. Fixation now, a very strong attachment or a feeling. So, it was an otter fixation. He got so attracted to that otter. There was a strong feeling for that otter that I have since found to be shared by most other people who have ever owned one. He says, I went exactly like all the other people who, own these otters. I also faced the same thing. I got so attracted to that otter. And like it was a thraldom, it was like I was literally being ruled by him. I was under the control of the otter. The creature that emerged from this sack onto the spacious tiled floor of the consulate bedroom resembled most of all a very small, medievally conceived dragon. Medievally conceived as in an imagination of the Middle Ages. It was something like, in the Middle Ages, how, they were, those types sort of thing it was. It resembled that way. So when it came out on the tiled floor, from the head to the tip of the tail, he was coated with symmetrical pointed scales of mud armor, between whose tips was visible a soft velvet fur like that of a chocolate brown mole. Now, as soon as the otter was out of that sack, what did the author see? He was coated with mud from head to toe. Totally. There were, literally pointed scales of mud armor. He was fully rolled in mud. And from that, right in between, you could see soft velvet fur, just like that of a chocolate brown mole. He says, I could see that. He shook himself and I half expected a cloud of dust. When he shook himself, I thought, that dust would fly. But in fact, it was not for another month that I managed to remove the last of the mud and see the otter, as it were, in his true colors. He says, I thought when he shook himself, the dust would fly. But that did not happen for the entire month. That mud was so glued onto the otter that it took him nearly a month to remove all that mud and actually see it in its true colors. It took him a whole lot of time. Mijbil, as I called the otter, that's what he named his pet, was in fact of a race previously unknown to science and was at length christened by zoologist Lutrogale presbycillata maxwelli, or Maxwell's otter in short. So yeah, that zoologist had come across, and so it was named Maxwell's otter, right? It was of a race previously unknown to science, and it was at length. It was christened by him, so they called him Maxwell's otter. For the first 24 hours, Mijbil was neither hostile nor friendly. See, neither was he unfriendly. He was not acting weird. Neither was he friendly. He was just blank. He was silent. He was simply aloof and indifferent. Aloof and indifferent as in he was at a distance. He just stayed there, away from me. Choosing to sleep on the floor as far from my bed as possible. He wanted to sleep away from me. He kept a lot of distance, and he was away from my bed. The second night, Mijbil came on to my bed in the small hours and remained asleep in the crook of my knees until the servant brought tea in the morning, and during the day, he began to lose his apathy, as in his absence of interest, and take a keen, much too keen interest in his surroundings. Now, it so happens when you bring someone home, or rather, if you look at humans also, when we go to a new place, we don't immediately mingle with the new people. We take some time to settle down, to actually understand that place, to know the people. It goes with us as well. So you can imagine this otter which had come from the Tigris marshes, and imagine now he had to stay in that house, right? So he had to get used to one person. Now here, first, on the very first day, he was unfriendly, friendly, neither of it. He was just, far away. He was aloof. And then gradually, on the second day, on the second night, he came up to the poet. He came up on his bed, and he was there in the crook of his knees. He was just there close to his knees until the servant brought tea in the morning. And during the day, then he started to take total interest in the surroundings, in everything that was around there. He started poking his nose everywhere. I made a body belt for him and took him on a lead to the bathroom. Now, I made a body belt. Now, just like, you pet a dog, right? So then you have that collar thing for the dog. So he made a body belt for him, and he took him on a lead to the bathroom, where for half an hour he went wild with joy in the water. He was a semi-aquatic mammal, so he enjoyed water, plunging and rolling in it, shooting up and down the length of the bathtub underwater, and making enough slosh and splash for a hippo. He just went wild in that water. He did everything possible he could. What was his reaction when he saw the water? He started plunging and rolling in it. He started shooting up and down the length of the bathtub. He went there, he went here, he kept coming up and down. Even underwater, he was going underwater, and he was making enough slosh and splash for a hippo. He was splashing so much of water. This, I was to learn, is a characteristic of otters. Every drop of water must be, so to speak, as it were, extended and spread about the place. A bowl must at once be overturned, or if it will not be overturned, be sat in and splashed it until it overflows. Now, this was the characteristic he discovered, the author discovers. And what did he discover? He says, still, there is water in the bowl, or wherever the otter is. Till he does not empty, till he does not splash all that water out, he will not leave that place. He will make sure every drop of the bowl is out. It has been splashed. Only then will it be at peace. See, it's clearly given. The bowl must be at once overturned. If not, it will not be overturned. He will sit in it and splashed in until it overflows, until all the water is out. Water must be kept on the move and made to do things. That water cannot just be kept. There has to be movement. When static, when it does not move, it is wasted and provoking. Provoking as in causing anger or some other reaction. Now for them, the water has to, it cannot remain, it has to keep moving. There has to be some movement in the water. Otherwise, they start reacting to it, the otters. 2 days later, Mijbil escaped from my bedroom as I entered it, and I turned to see his tail disappearing round the bend of the corridor that led to the bathroom. Now suddenly, one fine morning, that's 2 days later, I suddenly noticed him, just going somewhere. He escaped the bedroom, and where did he go? He saw his tail disappearing round the bend of the corridor. He saw him from the corridor. He could see he went that side, and that corridor led to the bathroom. By the time I got there, he was up on the end of the bathtub. Now till the author could get there, and he was already on top of the bathtub and fumbling at the chromium taps with his paws. Fumbling as in trying to do something in a clumsy manner. He was trying to open the chromium tap, and with his paws. I watched amazed. I was shocked. What is he doing? In less than a minute, he had turned the tap far enough to produce a trickle of water, little water. He succeeded. In that, little water started pouring out, and after a moment or two, achieved the full flow. He succeeded, and the most fortunate thing was he had been lucky to turn the tap the right way. On later occasions, he would sometimes screw it up little, still tighter, chittering with irritation and disappointment at the tap's failure to cooperate. Now, at that point of time, he succeeded. The first time, he succeeded in turning the tap in the right direction, so he got a good flow. He got a full flow. But at times, then later, now that was just one he's explained to us and described it to us. At other times when he was doing, he would, now he wasn't aware. So at times he would do it the other way around, and that made the tap tighter and it would irritate the otter. So that became a problem. And then he would get angry that the tap is not cooperating with him. Very soon, Midge would follow me without a lead. He would follow me and come to me when I called his name. Now he started getting that rapport, that understanding happened between the two of them. He spent most of his time in play. He spent hours shuffling a rubber ball round the room like a four-footed soccer player, using all the 4 feet to dribble the ball, and he could also throw it with a powerful flick of the neck to a surprising height and distance. This is how Mijbil would entertain himself. He would play with the ball. He spent most of the time with that. He would, dribble the ball with all his 4 feet, with the 4 paws like he had. And after he did that, he would also kick the ball. How? By a quick, light movement of the neck, he would actually hit the ball to a surprising height. It would go really high and really far. That's how he used to enjoy himself. But the real play of an otter is when he lies on his back and juggles with small objects between his paws. Now, these people, they actually enjoy themselves the most when they are lying on their back and the 4 paws are on top and they are playing with small objects. Marbles were Mijbil's favorite toys. He also calls him Midge, okay? Marbles were Midge's favorite toys for his pastime. He would lie on his back, rolling 2 or more of them up and down his wide, flat belly without ever dropping one to the floor. He would play with the marbles. He would just have them on his back, like he would lie on his back and he would have it on his, back, rolling 2 or more of them up and down his wide, flat belly. On his belly, he would have his marbles and he would be so careful about it. He would not even let one marble touch the floor. The days passed peacefully at Basra, but I dreaded the prospect of transporting Midge to England and to Camusfierna. Now, the time came when I had to leave Basra. That was okay, but now the thought of going back to England was a little scary. I dreaded the prospect, as in I was in great fear of something that would happen in the future. Now, he's supposed to go back home to England. Now, he had to take Midge with him. How would he do it? He was scared about the fact. The British airline to London would not fly animals, so I booked a flight to Paris on another airline and then from there to London. He had a direct flight, but the British airline would not take it. They do not fly animals. So what he had to do, he had to book a flight to Paris, then from Paris to London. He had to go via Paris. The airline insisted that Midge should be packed into a box not more than 18 inches square to be carried on the floor at my feet. The airline said, okay, you are being allowed, you are being permitted to carry your animal, but how will you carry it? Condition is that it should be packed into a box which should be not more than 18 inches square. It should be a square, that means 18 inches all sides, and you will have to keep this at the floor near your feet. I had a box made, and an hour before we started, he got the box made. Now 1 hour before they could begin their journey, I put Midge into the box so that he would become accustomed to it and left for a hurried meal. He says now it was 1 hour to go. So what I did was, I said if I put him early, let him get used to it. Let him get used to that he has to sit in that box for some time. So I put him there for 1 hour and I went for a quick meal. When I returned, there was an appalling spectacle. Appalling spectacle as in a shocking scene. What did he see? There was complete silence from the box. There was no sound, no movement. But from its air holes and chinks around the lid, blood had trickled and dried. Oh God. Now, when he came back, he saw that box, no sound, no movement, but in fact, he could see dry blood from the air holes and in the edges. I whipped off the lock. I quickly took off the lock and tore open the lid. I literally opened it really fast, and Midge, exhausted and blood spattered, whimpered and caught at my leg. Poor fellow, he was so nervous, he was so exhausted, and he was blood spattered. He had blood all around. He whimpered. He was literally in pain, and he caught at my leg. He immediately came and caught me by my leg. He had torn the lining of the box to shreds. Now, he was very uncomfortable inside. So what he had done was, he had torn the lining, that inner layer of the box, into pieces, into shreds. When I removed the last of it so that there were no cutting edges left, it was just 10 minutes until the time of the flight, and the airport was 5 miles distant. Now, he had to be very quick. So what he did was, he quickly removed all those shreds, making sure that no pokey thing is left. Otherwise, again, it would hurt Otter. It would hurt the Otter. And while he did all that, he cleaned the box. There were only, it was time for his flight. It was just 10 minutes. And he had to cross a distance of 5 miles to reach the airport. I put the miserable Midge back into the box, holding down the lid with my hand. I put him there, I kept my hand on the lid, and I moved from there. I sat in the back of the car with the box beside me as the driver tore through the streets of Basra like a ricocheting bullet. Now imagine, he had just 10 minutes and 5 miles to get to the airport. It was time for the flight. So as soon as he sat there in the car, the driver drove it just like, how a bullet changes direction after hitting a surface. Zook and zoop it goes. This is how the car went. The aircraft was waiting to take off. I was rushed through to it by infuriated officials. He says they were waiting just for me. I was the last passenger to board. And the people over there, the officials, were so angry with me. They quickly took me to the aircraft. Luckily, the seat booked for me was at the extreme front. I was right in the front. I covered the floor around my feet with newspapers. Why did he do that? Remember, Midge, he had to keep the box there. rang for the air hostess. You have to ring that bell. Gave her a parcel of fish for Midge. He had to feed Midge. He had to carry his food. So he had carried that parcel and he told her, please keep it in a cool place because I have to feed him. I took her into my confidence, as in I shared with her my experiences, what had happened with me, about the events of the last half hour. I just told her all that had happened. I shared with her, this is what happened to me and that's the reason I was late. I have retained the most profound admiration for that air hostess. Till day I remember that I literally admire that air hostess. She was so loving, so caring and so understanding. She was the very queen of her kind, extremely loving. She suggested that I might prefer to have my pet on my knee. She says, please keep that box on your knee. And I could have kissed her hand in the depth of my gratitude. He says, I just wanted to express a big thank you to her that, you have really, really helped me out. But not knowing otters, I was quite unprepared for what followed. Now everything settled. But now what happened next? It was something he was not aware of, he was not prepared for. Midge was out of the box in a flash. He was just out of the box. He disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. Imagine you are sitting and that creature just comes out. Now he's an otter. Everybody doesn't, So he disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. There were quacks and shrieks. Everyone started screaming. And a woman stood up on her seat, screaming out, a rat, a rat. Now for her, she did not know. She did not know what the animal was. She thought it was a rat. I caught sight of Midge's tail disappearing beneath the legs of a portly, white turbaned Indian. I saw him disappearing, between the legs, or beneath the legs rather, of a portly, as in a stout, white turbaned Indian. Yeah, white turban as in Sardarji, probably, maybe. Diving for it, I tried to hold him, but what did I do? I missed and I found my face covered in curry. He landed up in the food. Perhaps, said the air hostess with the most charming smile, it would be better if you resumed your seat. She says, look, please go back to your seat and I will find the animal and bring it to you. She says, don't worry, you go and just sit down. I will do the needful and I will bring him back to you. You don't worry. I returned to my seat. I was craning my neck, trying to follow the hunt, when suddenly I heard from my feet a distressed chitter of recognition and welcome, and Midge bounded onto my knee and began to nuzzle my face and my neck. Now, he was trying to do this. He was craning his neck. Where is he? Where is he? He's trying to do that. And while he was doing that, he heard from the feet, from his feet, the sound. It was a very familiar sound, a distressed chitter of recognition and welcome. He could hear that sound which he was very familiar. He knew it's him. And Midge bounded onto my knee. He climbed up quickly into my knee and he started to nuzzle. Nuzzle as in to rub gently with his nose, my face and neck. He just came back to him. Midge and I remained. Now they reached London. So they remained in London for nearly a month. He would play for hours with a selection of toys, ping pong balls, marbles, rubber fruit, and terrapin shell. What are these? The shell of a small turtle found in North America. You can see that. So it was a terrapin shell that I had brought back from his native marshes. From where he had taken otter, from there itself, he had brought this terrapin shell, so that he could play with it. You can see the different toys he used to play. Please remember, it can come for 1 or 2 marks. With the ping pong ball, he invented a game of his own, which would keep him busy, totally engrossed for up to half an hour at a time. Now, he made a game for himself. So what he did was he invented that game, and he was totally, completely interested in it. At least for the next half an hour, he would keep doing that continuously. A suitcase that I had taken to Iraq had become damaged on the journey home. Now, which I had taken to Iraq, that bag had broken, so that the lid, when closed, remained at a slope from one end to the other. So the bag, the lid was like this, it was on a slope. Midge discovered that if he placed the ball on the high end, it would run down the length of the suitcase. Now obviously it's on a slope, so the ball would roll down. He would dash around to the other end. He would throw the ball from top. He would run quickly to the other end to ambush its arrival, as in to attack suddenly from a hidden position. Now he would go from the side of the suitcase, and zoop, he would go and attack it. Hide from it, crouching to spring up and take it by surprise. He would have fun with the ball, that he would hide from it. He would just leap up to it and catch it by surprise, grab it and trot off with it to the high end once more. He would grab it again, he would go up to the high end slope, and again he would keep repeating this cycle. Outside the house, I exercised him on a lead precisely as if he had been a dog. I just started treating him just like how you would handle a dog. Midge quickly developed certain compulsive habits on these walks in the London streets. Now, while we used to do this on a regular basis, he developed certain habits which were impossible to control. There were some things he did whenever we walked down the streets of London. And what all did he do? What were those compulsive habits? Like the rituals of children who on their way to and from school must place their feet squarely on the center of each paving block. Okay, now this was the first thing. Just like children would walk, on every block, they would keep their feet in the center of each paving block. One. Second, must touch every seventh upright of the iron railings. Upright as in the post or the rod placed straight up. So every seventh railing they would touch, he would do the same. He would touch every seventh upright of the iron railings, or he would pass it to outside of every second lamppost. He would pass to the outside. He would go from outside of every alternate lamppost. He developed these habits. These are strange habits which he just wanted to have fun. So he would do that whenever they walked down the London streets. Opposite to my flat was a single-storied primary school, along whose frontage ran a low wall some 2 feet high. Now exactly opposite to the author's house, there was a single-storied, one-storied primary school. Now in the front of it, what was there? Whose frontage ran a low wall. There was a low wall in front of it, maybe just 2 feet high. On his way home, but never on his way out, whenever he would come back, when they would go out, he wouldn't do it. But whenever they came back, Midge would tug me to this wall. He would take me, he would pull me to that wall, jump onto it, and gallop the full length of its 30 yards to the hopeless distraction. Something that takes away one's attention from whatever you are doing, both of pupils and of staff within. Now, whenever he came back, now he's so smart, he wouldn't do it when he would go somewhere. But when he would come back from wherever they would come back, he would pull him. He would pull him over there, then he would get onto that wall and he would gallop. The whole 30 yards, that wall was 30 yards. He would gallop the whole thing non-stop. And the way he would do it so beautifully that the children on the other side, it was a school. So the children and the staff would get totally distracted and they would never be able to stop watching him. They would keep watching him. So it was like hopeless. It is not, I suppose, in any way strange that the average Londoner should not recognize an otter. But the variety of guesses as to what kind of animal this might be came as a surprise to me. Now, it was pretty shocking. As an average Londoner, maybe by, you recognize these animals. So I'm sure they should recognize that this, creature is an otter. But he used to get such weird, such strange guesses. He used to be shocked. He says, oh my God, they don't even know which animal this is. Otters belong to a comparatively small group of animals called mustelines. Now, it belongs to these mustelines shared by the badger, mongoose, weasel, stoat, mink and others. All these sort of belong to that sort of family. I faced a continuous barrage of conjectural questions that sprayed all the mustelines but the otter. Now, he used to face all sorts of a stream of questions filled with guesses. They used to keep wondering which animal. So every time, new people used to keep seeing him and he used to get new guesses. Yes, so he used to face these sort of stream of questions filled with guesses, and it sprayed all the mustelines. They would keep guessing all sorts of animals but the otter. They would name all the other animals but never the otter. More random guesses hit on a baby seal and a squirrel. Most of them would call him a baby seal. He looked like a baby seal or a squirrel. Is that a walrus, mister? Imagine calling him a walrus. Reduced me to giggles. And outside a dog show, I heard a hippo. Now, all these, were the guesses to find actually which animal was he. A beaver, a bear cub, a leopard. One apparently that had changed its spots. And a brontosaur, which was anything but an otter. They named him all these different animals. All of them, but nobody directly said that he is an otter. These were all the different guesses. So yes, please expect a 2 to 3 marks question based on this. But the question for which I awarded the highest score came from a laborer digging a hole in the street. He says everything fine. I enjoyed all this and it was okay. Till there it was fine. But the question for which I awarded the highest score, which I considered the ultimate question, came from a laborer who was digging a hole in the street. Now that poor laborer, how will he know who is he? I was still far from him. I was way far. He was there. He was digging a hole. When he laid down his stool, put his hands on his hips and began to stare. He's like looking, what type of animal is coming? As I drew nearer, I saw his expression of surprise and affront. He was like shocked. He was surprised, as though he would have me know that he was not one upon whom to play jokes. Now, the way he looked, I could make out that I cannot play jokes with this man. I came abreast of him. I came just there. He spat, glared and then growled out. He just spat, he really stared and he screamed out, he growled out, "Here, mister, what is that supposed to be?" Now here he did not even guess an animal. He is literally asking him, what is that supposed to be? I mean, he didn't even say that's an animal. So yes, he faced all these different and odd situations when Otter was with him, but yet he had the most beautiful time of his life. He got so compatible with the pet. Now with any pet, now here it's an otter, but any pet, most of you must be having pets at home. You know how attached, how bonded you get with, with your pets. So here it was Otter and the author. So yes, before we wind up, healthy otters tell us we have a healthy countryside. Very well put up by J.C. Tregarthen. Yeah, now here when we are specifically talking about otters, so he says if your otters are healthy, then it is a conclusion that you have a healthy countryside. Now because everything is healthy over there, so the otters are healthy. It's the other way. Yeah. So yes, more to learn, more to know, much more to explore, and you have to keep revising. You have to make sure that you know all your text very well so that you can frame good answers. And for the same, yes, keep watching and keep learning.